So how we will proceed in economic survey and budget is that you have to make some running notes. Okay, I'll tell some data points. You have to remember only those data points. At the same time, I'll share this entire PPT with you. Okay. Later on, what you need to do is you just have to mark out only those areas which are required. Okay. You need not go into the details of each and every graph. Okay, there will be some 60, 70 graphs you have to go through. But the thing is, you need not remember all the data in there. Okay, minimal data you have to remember. I'll mark out what data it is. You remember that data only. Clear? Yes? So, how we are going to proceed? First, we are going to look at what is there in the economic survey. Related to that chapter, what is there in the budget? Yes? And then we'll look at the graphs related to that particular chapter from both budget and economic survey. Clear? So this is how we are going to proceed. So first, economic survey, a chapter related to that, what is there in the budget, and then graphs related to both of them. Economic survey, we have 12 chapters. All the stuff we have studied in the class, those all chapters, somewhere around 20 to 23 chapters. All those 22 to 23 chapters will be in these 12 chapters itself. Okay. So what is this economic survey? This economic survey is a comprehensive account of what? Of what? Of the growth trajectory that a country takes. A growth trajectory. What is the growth trajectory? In what way it is developing? As in the growth rates. How are they moving? So we keep saying 5% growth rate last year, this year 6% growth. That is the growth trajectory. It not only gives the idea about the previous years, it also gives the idea about the upcoming years. Yes? Second, a comprehensive account because it covers almost all the sectors of the economy. Broadly speaking, primary, secondary, tertiary sector. What are the challenges these sectors face? What is supposed to be done? Many times it so happens agriculture sector is doing well, whereas industry sector and services sector are lagging, as we saw during the pandemic. Right? So it is going to give an idea about all the sectors, how they are performing presently, what can be done to improve them. And then a comprehensive account of the past, the present, medium term, and the long term. Medium term and long term. Past, we know. Present, the current year. Medium term, what is medium term? How much is considered to be medium term in economics? How many years? 3 years. Medium term is 3 years. Long term, more than 3 years. Okay. It gives an idea, an account of all the sectors, the growth trajectory, as well as the idea for these times. When I say all the sectors, primary, secondary, tertiary, plus you have the financial sector, the banking sector, basically. You have the external sector. Yes? For all these sectors, it gives a comprehensive account. That is why we generally say that if you are able to understand the economic survey properly, right, it means your work with economy is done. Actually, it is done. If you are able to understand everything that is there in the economic survey. Right? So the focus will be on, see, when you look at the economic survey as a whole, you see that there are so many things to learn. There are so many things to learn, so many things to remember. It is humanly not possible for you to remember everything. And it is of no use as well. That is why what we will do is, we will go in this manner itself, where you have a mind map, right? I will expand this mind map further. Okay. So whatever I write in the expansion, only that much is required for you. In the economic survey which runs into more than 350 pages, in that you have more details which is not required. Even for your mains examination, this is sufficient. Clear? Yes? Okay. Who prepares it? Who prepares it? Huh? Okay. Economic Affairs what? Department of Economic Affairs. Yes? Department of Economic Affairs. Which ministry? Finance Ministry. Guidance किसका होगा? Under the guidance of Chief Economic Advisor. The department is Department of Economic Affairs. Under the Finance Ministry, guidance of Chief Economic Advisor. How is it related to budget then? How is it related to budget? In relationship with budget? It comes exactly one day before the budget. Yes? So then what is that date? Huh? 31st January. Yes. Every year, one day before the budget, that's when you get this economic survey. Now, what is the purpose of economic survey being released one day before the budget? It can be released later as well, right? Why is it released just before budget? What reason? Any particular reason for that? Any reason you can think of? Huh? Online people, any reason? Think, just tell me, what can be the reason? Your guess. The reason is simple. What does the economic survey do? It covers all the sectors. It gives the information about all the sectors of the past, present and the future. Basically, it has suggestions as well. These are the challenges. This is supposed to be done. This is what economic survey does. Based on this, budget is prepared. Budget is prepared on the basis of inputs given by economic survey. Some of the inputs are considered to be really important in order to create a budget. Inputs by the economic survey become really important. Because it takes inputs from the economic survey, the economic survey will have all the statistics related to these many resources are there in our country, as in capital resources. These have been used in this manner. This has been the outcome. Schemes have worked this way. Some of them have not worked. Based on all this information, efficiently in the budget, we can mobilize the resources and allocate the resources. Mobilization and allocation becomes more efficient. With the guidance of economic survey, what happens? Mobilization and allocation of the resources becomes more efficient. What is mobilization? What is mobilization of resources? What is mobilization of resources? Have you come across this term? Mobilization of resources. Tell me what is it? It is a part of your syllabus as well. What is the meaning? Mobilization of resources is just that you having an idea of all the resources that you can use and putting them to use now. In what ways can they be put to use? And are they available for us or not? For example, say, do you know this national monetization pipeline? Do you know it or not? NMP. Heard of it? National monetization pipeline. Simple way of understanding this. Yes, you have seen your railways. Yes, the rail track goes straight, right? Uske bagal mein there will be some or a railway department is there or a railway office is there. Just around it, if you check, it will have fencing, right? It will have built a compound. Still area is left. It is not being used at present. Don't you think this resource which belongs to the railways is useless for now? Right? Using that, it is not earning any revenue. Now, What does economic survey do? Economic survey gives an idea. What idea does it give? It gives an idea. Actually, railways and other departments, other ministries can put their resources which are unused to use. Right? Now, you mobilize the resources. What resource? Empty land was there, or empty building was there, which belongs to the railways. Now it will be given on rent. Yes or no? What is this? Mobilization of resources. What is allocation of resources? To which sector you are going to utilize this money? Right? The government has collected the revenue. See, even taxation is a way of mobilization of resources. As in, your economic survey gives an idea. Tax evasion is this much in India. These steps should be taken to avoid, or prevent tax evasion. Now, same measures will be taken, right? What would that lead to? Mobilization of resources. Better mobilization of resources, right? You can collect the taxes better. And what about allocation of resources? You see that the money that has been collected by the government, where will the government spend the money? On various sectors. It will give some money to the states. All of it is what? Allocation. Yes? Clear? Now, another way of looking at mobilization and allocation. Say, there are some mines, right? The government did not know the existence of these minerals in India. Some people suggested that, okay, there are some minerals available, huge resources are available. For example, in Jammu and Kashmir recently they said that what? Lithium is available. Right? Now, the government gives this work of mining, exploration and mining to private sector. What is that? Mobilization of resources. Right? It is trying to mobilize the resources which are available to us. Once it is extracted, what will we use this lithium for? The government is going to come up with a policy. What is that? Allocation of resources. So you have to have a broader idea. When we say mobilization of resources and allocation of resources, it's not just about the money. It goes beyond money as well. Yes? Next. Survey of 2021, 22, 22, 23. Okay, which economic survey are we going to deal with? 22, 23 or 23, 24? You tell me that first. Which one? 22, 23. What about this one? That is budget. Oh, great. Thank you. Okay. So, what was the focus of 21-22 survey? That is last year's survey. And what is there in the present survey? Broad theme. So, 21-22 survey was created in the backdrop of pandemic, right? Where many things had changed, sudden shifts had to happen. So the government, the Department of Economic Affairs, the Chief Economic Advisor, focused mostly on policy making here. Policy making approach. Right? It focused on the policy making approach. When you look at the entire economic survey, the theme that runs across the entire economic survey is that it had made a shift from waterfall approach to agile approach. From waterfall approach to agile approach. What is this waterfall approach? Till 2021, the policy making of the government related to your fiscal policy, monetary policy, it was waterfall approach. The economic survey said from 2021 onwards, after the pandemic, we are shifting towards an approach which is called agile approach when it comes to policy making. What is this difference? Waterfall approach is an approach where it is going to be based on detailed analysis, One, two, planning and execution, everything happens. So analysis, planning and execution, all the three happen upfront. Upfront in the sense, proactively. Proactively you are going to plan, proactively you are going to plan the execution as well, right? And you are going to have a detailed analysis even before you do something. What is that? Waterfall approach. Is it not good? The economic survey said that this approach is rather traditional. So then how are we supposed to make the policies? The economic survey suggested we are supposed to shift to agile approach. In fact, the government has made a shift to agile approach. That is why we were able to tackle what? The pandemic. And the negative impact of the pandemic we were able to manage because we made a shift to agile approach. So what is this agile approach? Policy making will be based on real-time data. Real-time data. This is a wonderful idea actually. So real-time data you take. After taking the real-time data, you actually come up with a solution. Come up with a solution to the problem based on the data you get. But there is a problem here. The problem is because you are working on real-time basis, because you are making the solutions right away, the major problem is going to be the outcomes may have a negative impact. See, sudden problem aaya, you have sudden solutions. When you have sudden solutions, the outcomes may be negative. But if you have planned everything, then the outcomes, will be predictable. On predictable lines, it's yahan pe outcomes may be negative as well. That is why, because the outcomes may turn out to be negative. For this reason, we create social nets as well. We create social nets as well. What are these social nets? To protect the disadvantaged sections. To protect the disadvantaged sections. Now, agile approach is about, think of it this way. The government decided what? We are going to have complete lockdown. Agreed or not? The government decided complete lockdown based on the data it was giving. What is that? Real time, it was getting the data. Accordingly, it was planning the solutions. Yes or no? It knew that when I take these measures, there will be negative outcomes. Yes or no? There were negative outcomes. And who are getting hurt the most? The disadvantaged sections, that is the poorer sections. The government created social nets. In what sense? Free food grains it provided. Yes or no? What is that? It's a social net. Right? For MSME, credit was available at a very low interest rate, and also people were not able to pay the loans. They were given an option of moratorium. Right? For 2-3 months, you need not pay the loan at all. EMIs you need not pay. What is that? Social nets. Understood? So as the problems come, we'll come up with the solution. But along with the solution, we'll come up with what? Social nets. Why we have to have social nets? Because the outcomes may turn out to be negative. Clear? Yes. This was the approach taken by the survey. Survey scheme was this. This year's theme, on the other hand, speaks about transformative reforms. So what does the survey say? The survey says that we have taken so many reforms, undertaken so many reforms in the previous years. In the last, especially it speaks of the last 8 years. Okay, in the last 8 years, in fact, it goes back a bit as well, right? From 1991 itself, it speaks of, but it focuses mostly on the last 8 years. In the last 8 years, there have been a lot of reforms that have been undertaken, like your insolvency and bankruptcy code, GS-3, right? We have taken these reform measures, but tell me, whenever we take these big reforms, transformative reforms means which transforms the entire economy. Such reforms have been undertaken. The outcome should be positive, and the outcome should be very instantaneous almost. But what the survey argues is that while the reforms have been taken, the outcomes, the positive outcomes, have been lagged. Lagged as in, we did not get the results instantly. Right? The results which were positive came out after a bit. After a bit of time, we are getting the results. Why are we getting the results after a bit of time? Why are we getting lagged results? It says because of the shocks. Because of the shocks. So temporary shocks were there. Because of this, we take the reforms, we expect good outcomes, but we don't get those outcomes. Suddenly we don't get it. We get it after a time. Why were they delayed? Delayed because of some shocks. So temporary shocks were there, which led to delay. Okay, some temporary shocks. So one such shock is your pandemic. That was a shock, one such shock. Which may all छोटे-छोटे shocks there. We are going to focus on that. The first chapter is about that itself. Next. Despite those shocks, we always had the hope and optimism. And we still have it. We have had the hope and optimism, and we still have it, that these transformative reforms are going to change the face of India. Why? Why? Because we have some very good positives within the economy, right? These, the survey calls them as growth magnets. We have some growth magnets. Despite the shocks, we will be able to overcome those shocks, and we will be able to achieve the growth levels which we aspire. Right? The hope and optimism gets stronger because whatever shocks we have had till 2022 are slowly fading away as well. The fading away of shocks provides much more respite. Right? So the focus of the survey of 2022-23 will be on what? Transformative reforms. The transformative reforms have been good, but whatever results they are giving, they have been lagged. Why have they been lagged? Because of the temporary shocks to the economy. Right? But we have the hope and optimism. In fact, we are already seeing the signs of what? The growth coming back. Why? We have growth magnets. Which are these magnets? We'll learn. And then it becomes much more optimistic. The environment becomes much more optimistic because of the fading away of the shocks. Now, chapter 1 of economic survey. Chapter 1, state of the economy. This chapter will touch upon all the chapters. Basically, overview. of the entire economic survey, we can say. So these are all the things it has spoken of, right? Adverse events, impact of tightening. Adverse events, impact of tightening, challenges to the growth in Indian economy, India's economic resilience and growth drivers, India's inclusive growth, India's position, outlook for 23-24, and budget inputs. You don't have any budget inputs in the first chapter, right? But we will discuss about budget. Budget 23-24. What are the themes in this budget? Okay, we'll discuss that in this chapter. And after that, as the chapters go by, we are going to add those elements from the budget to that particular chapter. Clear? So these sessions are going to be more or less like your classroom sessions itself. Okay, why? Because I have to touch upon the basics as well again. Yeah. First, adverse events. What all adverse events does your economic survey mention? So, your economic survey mentions all these adverse events of 20th century, 21st century first decade, 21st century second decade, 21st century third decade. So, 20th century, the previous century, right? What were all the shocks during that time? And it had an impact on global economy. And then 21st century first decade, recent one. Which decade are we talking about? 2000 to 2010. And this one, 2010 to 20. The present one, right? The 3 years basically. Okay, we'll see the first one, 20th century. You tell me what shocks were there, 20th century. There were 2 world wars. Those were the 2 major shocks. 2 world wars. What other shocks were there? There was the Spanish flu. Which year? Any idea? 1718. Spanish flu. Anything else? Very good. Great Depression. Wonderful. Can you say the Cold War? Geopolitical tensions? Yes. Regional wars. Agreed? Yes. East Asian crisis. Towards the end. East Asian crisis. So here you have Gulf War and all. These were all the shocks we see in the 20th century. The economies across the world were getting these shocks. So if an economy is following a particular growth trajectory, let's say it is improving, shock mila, to niche aa jayega, automatic. Yes. 21st century, first decade. From here it becomes more important for us to track. 21st century, first decade. What shock? यहाँ पे for India specific. Any shock for India? Gulf War. Yes. Nuclear sanctions. Right. So basically, the first one is 1991 BOP crisis. Yes. And then sanctions by US on India. When? Which year? 1990? 1998, 99. Sanctions on India. Which affects trade? Which affects growth? 21st century, first decade. What shocks did we have? Globally. And of course, because after 1991, we had liberalization and privatization. What happened? There was globalization as well. Agreed? Do you remember that idea I told you? Liberalization, privatization and globalization. What have I told you? What have I told you? Liberalization, privatization and globalization. What is liberalization? Tell me that first. What is liberalization? Fast. Basically, opening up of the markets. Right? Opening the markets for foreign entry. Yes, rules are made simple. FDI is allowed. FDI is allowed. Goods you allow. Labor moves freely from foreign countries. What is privatization? Simple words. Rolling back of whom? Of the state. The government takes a step back. It allows the private sector to come in. That is privatization. In dono jet, what is the outcome? The outcome of these two is your globalization. Globalization in itself is not a process, is what I have told you. Globalization in itself is not a process. It is an outcome of these two processes. Okay? Globalization is an outcome of these two processes. Even as you continue with liberalization and privatization, globalization will happen. If every country follows these two, globalization will automatically happen. Okay? Now, tell me, 21st century, what are the things? 21st century, first decade.
Global financial crisis.
First decade. Which year? 2008. GFC. That was the most important thing. Is there anything else you can think of? Very good. The last year, 2010, we had the Eurozone crisis as well. Eurozone crisis. Scams, or globally, let's say globally. Was there anything that happened globally? What else? Anything else? Towards not this year, 2021 में COVID. Right, that comes to 21st century, third decade. Okay. Trade wars. Anything else? Europe में there was a huge slowdown. The economy slowed down greatly in Europe. Brexit, वहीं पे हुआ. Yes. So moments of stress and crisis in Europe. And next, what about 21st century? Third decade. Here, we have many adverse events. First is COVID-19. First stress. Second, Russia-Ukraine conflict. Russia-Ukraine conflict. Three. The fear of stagflation across the world, actually. Fear of stagflation across the world. And finally, the China problem. So slowdown in China. So China is slowing down. Basically, China was seen to be the engine of growth for the world. Right? So that is also slowing down. If that slows down, what happens? The production from China reduces. So supply chains get obstructed. Right? Then the growth across countries, because it is a major supplier of major major inputs for many of the goods. So if it slows down, other economies will also generally slow down. Now, these are the problems we have. COVID-19, what did it do? What impact did it have? One, because of COVID-19, there were lockdowns everywhere. Economic activities had to be shut down. in majority of the cases, because of which there was output contraction. Output contraction. What is output contraction? GDP went down. Not only was it economic, there was an impact on the social aspects as well. Social aspects, social indicators as well. Health and education took a hit. Health तो वैसे भी hit हुआ. Education also took a hit. Because of the loss of education, income generating activities also went down for many people. The impact of the loss of education will not be felt now. The impact of the loss of education will be felt few years later. Right? You might have seen so many memes coming around, right? Which which will be portraying like this person has got an education or become an engineer during when? During the pandemic. If he builds something, this is how it will be. है ना? तो क्या है? Education, it is going to have an impact. No, maybe not now, right? Few years later, it is going to have an impact. So COVID-19 has had an impact on output, at the same time social indicators, especially education. It is going to affect the income generating abilities of the people in the coming days. Right? Second, Russia-Ukraine conflict. Because of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Russia is a major producer of natural gas. Right? When Russia started its war with Ukraine, the supply of natural gas reduced. Automatically, the prices went up. Not only for your natural gas. Obviously, natural gas is used for transportation. Now, you make fuel out of it. Whenever the production reduces, transportation costs will increase. Supply reduces, the transportation costs increase. Along with that, the prices of almost everything will increase. Right? Now, commodity prices. The global commodity prices started going up, especially that of oil and natural gas, because of the conflict. Oil, gas, fertilizers, most importantly, for which we use natural gas. Because of this, the inflation actually started to accelerate from here. Inflation started accelerating. Now, sir, why accelerate? For this, you have to look at the context. 2021 क्या हुआ था? What happened in 2021? Pandemic. Because of the pandemic, what had happened? Output contraction. Okay. If output contraction is happening, what should the government do? It has to spend more money. Yes or no? It has to spend more money. If it starts spending money, basically it is trying to recover. During the recovery process, will the inflation go up or come down? Inflation will go up. So, the economies are trying to recover. They are spending more money. They have already spent, and the inflation is already inching towards the higher side. At the same time, what happened? Because of the commodity prices going up, inflation started to accelerate. This became a bigger challenge. Now, then what happened? Whenever you want your economy to recover, the government spends more, and also it brings down the interest rates, correct? Why does it bring down the interest rates? The central banks bring down the interest rates so that people take more loans, let them invest, right? Let the job be created. This is the idea. While this was ongoing, we got the Russia and Ukraine conflict, because of which the commodity prices automatically went down. Now, the next automatic reaction of all the economies across the world was monetary tightening. What is monetary tightening? Increasing the interest rates. World over, all the economies started to increase the what? Increase the interest rates. Why were they increasing? To control this accelerating inflation. Now, was the recovery complete? Recovery तो complete नहीं हुआ था. We were still recovering, right? Now, while you are recovering, if you take a measure to bring down the inflation, don't you think the growth also comes to a standstill? The China factor. China factor. So why is China slowing down in the recent past, in the last 2 to 3 years? Because of its zero COVID policy. Zero COVID policy. It is continuing with lockdowns. Right? Entire cities have been, cordoned off. Because of this, economic activity gets hit. So these are the shocks or the adverse events that are happening in the 21st century, third decade. Understood? Clear? Any doubts? Nahi hai? Okay. Next. What will happen with tightening? All the economies today are going with tightening, monetary tightening. Two things will happen because of this. One, it affects the public and private debt structures. Second, it can lead to a financial contagion. See, I have chosen only those lines in the economic survey from where you can get questions. Otherwise, you have a lot of information there. Okay? These words become important. They may simply ask you what is the meaning of financial contagion. Yes? So, it affects the private and the public debt structures. How does it affect? Very simple. You have to connect. See, it's like a story. Previous slide, what have I told you? I had told you that interest rates are increasing. Correct? If the interest rates are increasing, basically repo rate is increasing. In India's case, repo rate is increasing. If the repo rate is increasing, you tell me, if repo is increasing, don't you think the G-Sec interest rate will also increase? Will it increase or decrease? It will increase. Agree? If G-Sec interest rate is increasing, government has to pay more or less? Government should pay more. Yes? Can we say the price of the G-Sec will come down? The yield of the G-Sec will increase? Yes? If in every country they are increasing the interest rate to control inflation, will this be the case? The prices of their bonds will be falling, the yield will be increasing, basically the interest rate on their G-Sec will be increasing. Agree? Yes or no? The cost of borrowing for every government will have increased. You tell me. If interest rate on G-Sec is increasing, corporate sector bonds, will they have to increase the interest rate or not? They also must increase. Otherwise, what will people do? They will not put their money here at all. They will put all their money where? G-Sec. They will also increase. Yes? If everybody is increasing the interest rate, will they be able to easily pay the debt or paying the debt becomes more difficult? Clear? It will affect both the public and the private debts. Understood? Next. It can lead to a financial contagion. Financial contagion. What is a financial contagion? One economy, if it fails, right, other economies also will start to fail. Why will they fail? Why will they fail? Let's suppose one economy like France failed. if France fails, don't you think the surrounding countries will also fail, which have very good trade relations with France? They also will start failing. All the lenders to France, they will also start failing. What will it lead to? Financial contagion. The financial problems spreading from one country to another country is called financial contagion. The financial failures spreading from one country to another country. So, a crisis spreads from one market to another market. That is known as financial contagion. Yes, very important, the flow. If you remember the flow, you can remember everything. In order to deal with these shocks, okay, in order to deal with these shocks, we have chosen the path of inclusive growth so that, during crisis, those people who are the disadvantaged sections do not get affected too much. For this reason, we have chosen this inclusive growth path. So, crisis spreading from one market to another market, that is financial contagion. Since 2008 itself, the non-financial debt for many countries have been on the higher side. Now, what is this non-financial debt? What is financial debt? What is non-financial debt? Very simple way to understand this. Financial debt means the debt owed by the banking sector, insurance sector, and pension sector. Basically, lending institutions जो भी हैं, which deal with finance, that is finance sector. Finance is their main job. All those will be what? Finance sector. So, do banks borrow? Do they have debt? Yes, that would be called financial debt. What about non-financial debt? The debt apart from the financial sector. All the debt. For example, corporate sector debt, government debt, all of it is what? Non-financial debt. So the firm's debt, the corporate sector debt, that is the government's debt, all of it would be what? Non-financial. It has been increasing since 2008. However, in India, in the recent past, it has started to fall. Non-financial debt has started to fall. Why? Why? Because of two reasons. It has started to fall because of two reasons. One, balance sheets have been cleaned. Balance sheets have been cleaned. How can you clean the balance sheets? Either you can use a write-off, or IBC. Yes, sir. Right. So majority of the debts have been cleaned. Second is deleveraging of corporate sector. Deleveraging of corporate sector. What is this deleveraging of corporate sector? Corporate sector was over leveraged. What is over leveraged lending? What is over leveraged lending? Lending to someone beyond their ability. That would be over leveraged lending. It has been deleveraged. As in, the banks will give the loans to the corporate sector only till that capacity they can pay back. They are not being given loans beyond their capacity. Yes. So they have been deleveraged. Basically, how is this done? Strict regulations will be there by the RBI that you are not supposed to give the loans beyond this particular point for anyone. Okay, strict regulations. ठीक है? Because of this, even if there is a financial contagion, we are insulated. We are sort of insulated. Because our balance sheets are clean, our non-financial debt has come down. Yes. In other countries, the non-financial debt is still on the higher side. Relatively on the higher side. Our non-financial debt has come down. That is why we are sort of insulated. We can be happy about it. So even if there is a financial crisis somewhere in other part of the country, we need not fear what it's spreading to India. Challenges. Challenges. The growth of Indian economy. What are the challenges? We have made a recovery and we are past. Recovery has been done. We are past that pre-pandemic level of growth. Yes? We are past that pre-pandemic level of growth. As in, the GDP growth has gone beyond what? The pre-pandemic level. So the GDP size was, let's say, 2.5 trillion before the pandemic. Now we have surpassed it. So during the pandemic, it had come down. Now we have surpassed it. So recovery has happened. That is why the chapter says what? Recovery complete. Okay. Next. Omicron had come, but the effect has been very, very limited. Omicron, kaun sa wave tha? Third wave. Yes, third wave. The effect has been very, very limited. Why the effect was limited? Why was the effect limited? Vaccination. One is vaccination. What is the second reason? What is the second reason? Second reason is health infrastructure. One is vaccination. Two, health infrastructure. Investment in health infrastructure. Three, what is the third one? Social nets. Social nets had been created. Because of the social nets, what is social net? Support from the government was there. For all the sectors, support from the government was there. That is why the impact was less of the third one. Done? So, you can also mention that herd immunity we are right? There was this herd immunity as well in India. In fact, the problem is so much so that for 10 months continuously in 2022, the inflation was on the higher side, beyond the RBI's target. Beyond RBI's target range. For how many months? For 10 months. Now, MPC, Monetary Policy Committee, right? It is supposed to maintain the target of inflation between what? 2 to 6%. It was above 6% for how many months? Almost 10 months. Now, when is it considered a failure by the MPC? For how many quarters? 2 or 3 quarters? 3 consecutive quarters. For 3 consecutive quarters, if it is beyond 6% or less than 2%, it is considered to be a failure. So, has the RBI failed there? Yes. That is why it gave a report as well. Right? That is why it gave a report to the parliament as well. As to why this is happening. Done? So, this threat continues, this challenge continues. The other challenge is the depreciation of currency. Now, this is related to what we have learned earlier. The currency is depreciating day by day. Weak currency, it is becoming a weaker currency. The problem of this would be what? What is the problem? The imports, the import bill will be on the higher side. the forex reserves get depleted. So the current account deficit keeps on increasing. The CAD, current account deficit, keeps on increasing. Now tell me, what is current account deficit? What is current account deficit? Imports export difference, that would be current account deficit. Pakka. Is there anything else in the current account? Okay. Current account में क्या क्या है? I will tell you one more thing, which is there in your survey itself, right? Later on, it becomes important for you to actually know this. It will come in a graph at some point, but I will tell you now itself. There is something called as primary income and secondary income. Primary income and secondary income. Where? In your current account. And then you have capital account, correct? So this is your BOP account. Current account, capital account. So primary income, secondary income, and then you have what? Goods and services. This is one way of classification. Classification of current account, this is one way. What is the other way of classification of current account? We classify it this way. Visible, invisible. In invisible, what are all the things we have? Invisible, what do we have? Invisible, you have merchandise, correct? Only goods. Here, you have services. What do you have here? Income, transfers. What are these incomes? Profits, interest, yes, wages. What are transfers? Basically grants. Remember? You remember or no? Avi, what I am saying is these two here. This is one way of class. This is another type of classification, is what I am saying. This entire thing, primary income. This one, the transfers part, is secondary. Very, very important. They may ask a question in current account of the BOP. What is primary income? What is primary income? The income from profit, interest, wages. Can you say all the income that you earn from the factors of production is primary income? Agree? The incomes earned from the factors of production would be primary income. Yes? Okay. So, this is your current account. When the balance of each of these items, right, is negative. So, merchandise, that is export of goods and import of goods, the balance is negative. Here also negative. Here it may be positive. Here it may be negative again, right? Overall, if it turns out to be negative, we say current account deficit. That's all. What do you have in capital account, by the way? Fast. Loans. Investment. Banking capital. Loans. Sovereign loans. And then ECBs. Investment. FDI. FPI. Right? You have other small things. Banking capital. FCNR. याद आया? Done. Only I remember. You don't remember. So, in challenges, what was the one we were talking about? The depreciation of currency. It leads to widening of current account deficit. right? So, and then what else do you have? Import will increase, forex reserves would get depleted. But to manage this challenge, India is well placed. Why is India well placed? India is well placed because, especially to manage CAD and depreciation, right? India is well placed. Why? Because we have sufficient forex reserves. Forex reserves are on the higher side. Okay, that is why we need not worry much. Though it is a challenge, we need not worry much. Why? Because we have more forex reserves. How much forex reserves do we have? $560 billion. Right? To that tune we have. The last challenge for Indian economy is the slowing growth. The GDP growth is slowing down everywhere. Because it is a globalized world, if other economies start to slow down, if they head towards recession, right, it will have a ripple effect on India as well. India also will slow down. So that is the fourth challenge. Okay, what are the challenges? COVID and its effects continue. The Europe problem, the depreciation problem, and the global slowing down of the economies. These are the challenges to Indian economy in the medium term. Right? So that is why the economic survey says that we should not be too optimistic about our growth even in 2024. Right? We should not be too optimistic. Why? Because we have this challenge, most important. This challenge and this challenge. Europe and slowing growth. These two things are not in our control. You see here, we can't be too optimistic about it. Okay, layoffs. Would it be a challenge? Same question was asked to me in the other class. So my answer is, why are layoffs happening? Overhiring. Now, there was disguised unemployment. They are clearing it. Right? See, the problem is not, we are not having a recession as of now. Generally, layoffs happen during the recession. We don't have recessions in the world now. What we have are slowdowns. During slowdowns, generally people are not fired. And whatever firing you are seeing, this is only in the IT sector. It is sector specific. Why is it sector specific? Probably the sector has a problem. What is that problem that was there in the sector? Overhiring that had happened earlier. Right? And people argue that it is because of the technology advancement. It is not because of the technology advancement. It is mostly because of what? Hiring in the first place. Right? So the others, other argument is that is like automation is happening. Right? Because of that, people are not getting jobs. That is also not true. That is also not true. In fact, they get more opportunities. Demand did not more. Demand ka problem hai. The problem is many times what happens is when we have a problem, the diagnosis is more important. Right? If you diagnose the problem in a wrong way, the solutions you come up with will also be wrong. Say for example, supply side problem hai to solution supply side mein hi hona hai. Right? You should not give a solution from the demand side. Many times in India, it has happened. Actually, before your COVID-19, right? There was a budget in 2019 September, right? 2019, the government, we had a second government, right? Second government of the same political party, right? Of the NDA. So 2019 February, they had the interim budget. Full budget was in September. So when the government gave the budget, the economy was slowing down actually. So even before the pandemic, the economy was slowing down. At that point, when the finance minister gave the budget, one of the major arguments of most of the people in the country regarding the budget was that the growth rate is slowing down because of what problem? Because of the demand side problem. Demand is not there. That is why the growth rate is slowing down. But what had the budget done? The budget had given the solution from the supply side. Right? See, demand side problem means people are not able to demand more. Why are they not able to demand more? Because they don't have money. Right? You have to somehow give incentive to people so that they increase their demand. This is what is supposed to be done. But what did the government do? In the budget, the government had given more incentives to the producers so that they produce more. Now what will happen? They will produce more. Still, people will not buy. Yes or no? So, this is the major issue. In every sector, the moment you have solutions coming from the wrong direction, then all the problems will arise. Same thing happened with your what? Job sector as well. Right? Now the problem is only with one sector. Sub-sector में नहीं है. ठीक है? Okay. Next is India's economic resilience and growth drivers. GDP forecast is done by many agencies. All the agencies, almost all the agencies, are downgrading the GDP forecast for all the countries. Right? So GDP forecast for all the countries have been downgraded. That is next year, by how much will the GDP grow? It has been forecasted that for all the countries, it will go down. Almost all the countries. Why? Even for India, they have said the same thing. Right? Even for India, they have said the same thing. But, so why is it downgraded for India? Remember the challenges. Because we have some challenges, right? Whether India will be able to tackle them or not, on the basis of that, this has been done. Now, we had 4 challenges, right? Out of the 4 challenges, which are the most important challenges India might not be able to manage? Which are they? This one and this one, right? What about the other 2? This and this. We are in a better position to manage. Because of this, the downgrading for India is not as steep as for other countries. Out of the 4 challenges, we will be able to manage at least 2. Other countries are not in a position to manage even those 2. So given this scenario, the downgrade for India is not too steep. Right? Zyada downgrade nahi kiya. Because of this, even after the downgrade by almost every agency, all put together, India's growth rate forecast is between 6.5% to 7%. All agencies. This forecast of 6.5% to 7% for the upcoming year, 23-24 ke liye, this forecast is higher than any comparable economy. जैसे कि you have the BRICS nations, right? So any comparable economy से ज़्यादा ही है. Now, another point we can say about this is that the 6.5%, 7% is without the backing of base effect. Now, what is the base effect? What is the base effect? Previous year's growth rate, right? That effect on the present year's growth rate. What does this mean? Without the backing of base effect. What does this mean? If the growth rate is 21, 22, 22, 23, 23, 24. We are saying this will be 6.7 to 7%, 6.5 to 7% is what we are predicting. How much is it now? Let's say 6%. How much was it last year? 5.4? 21, 20. 2021? 2021? Okay. It was not 5.4, it was much lesser. Generally what happens? When you have a very small number like 3%, achieving 6% is not a big deal. Right? Achieving 6% is not a big deal. Why is it not a big deal? This is a low base. It is a low base. From here to here, jump is not so big. But you are already growing at 6%. On top of it, if you want to grow 6.5 to 7%, that becomes more difficult. Yes or no? Right? You are growing slowly. Suddenly, if you move normally, it looks faster. Normal pace you are moving. Because you are moving slowly, now you move normally, it looks faster. Now already you are moving normally. Now, if you want to look faster, you have to move faster. Same here. So we don't have that base effect because we were already growing at good pace. Right? This year we are already growing at good pace. Next year, if we want to grow faster, obviously we have to grow faster in real terms as well. Right? So this base effect is missing. Because of this, the survey says that we have this economic resilience. What is that? Economic resilience is that. Okay. So we'll be able to recoup. What is recoup? Recouping. Bringing it back together. Renew. We are going to start afresh. Re-energize. We are going to give a new push. Right? New push to the growth. Right? We will be able to do this because we have economic resilience. Why did we get the economic resilience? Because we have done all the things. We are able to manage some challenges as well. That is why we are able to do that. We are already growing without the backing of what? Base effect. Done? Looking at all of this, can we say the recovery is almost complete? Yes. Whatever we have lost during the pandemic, we have recovered almost everything. Yes, almost everything except the lives. We have recovered everything, economically speaking. Next. What are the growth drivers? What are the growth drivers? Because of the world economy slowing down, will the demand for Indian goods be more or less? It will be less. Now, if the demand is lessening, Indian economy has to produce more goods or less goods? It is generally supposed to produce less goods. But what is it saying? It is saying that, the survey is saying that the demand domestically is growing. Whatever output loss was happening because of external demand going down is being replaced by what? Domestic stimulus. Domestically, the demand is increasing. The consumption at domestic is increasing. That is a positive. That is the first growth driver. So we need not worry about what? The world economy is slowing down. Domestic demand is back on track. In fact, the survey says that the private consumption, remember private consumption? What is private consumption? What is private consumption? Y is equal to C plus I plus G plus X minus N. Remember this? Yes? If these three are increasing, don't you think the demand will be on the higher side? Amongst these three, so this also should be on the higher side, of course, X also. Amongst these four, which one do you think contributes maximum to the demand? C. The survey says that the private consumption has been the highest, right? The private consumption has been the highest since 2013-14. 2013-14 से लेके till 2023 if you consider. In 22-23 this has been the highest. It is over 58%. Right? Over 58%. Private consumption has been the highest in this year. Which means domestic consumption has increased. C is what? Domestic. I is domestic. G is also domestic. Right? X is exports. We are saying this is going down. This consumption is going down. But it has been more than compensated by what? This one. That is the first growth stimulus. Domestic stimulus. Second. So we have near what? Near universal vaccination. So almost everybody has had the vaccine. Because of this, we don't have the fear of what? The pandemic, even if it comes back, hurting us more. Because of this, the businesses are back to investments. So they are not skeptical about making the investments because they have a guarantee. Right? They have a guarantee of that nothing is going to happen. So that optimistic outlook when it comes to the investment continues because of the vaccination. That is the second. Third, pent-up demand. You may get the question on this. Whenever you come across a new kind of word, right, you can expect a question from there. So what is the meaning of this pent-up demand? Demand has been suppressed for some reason. Now it is bouncing back. Pent-up anger both there. What is pent-up anger? All these years, you have been quiet. Right? All of a sudden, the anger burst out. Why does this happen? All these years you have suppressed it. Same way, people also, during the pandemic years, what had they done? They had not demanded many things. They were quiet. Now the demand is increasing. They say what is that? Revenge tourism. It was something called as revenge tourism. What was this revenge tourism? जैसे ही lockdowns खत्म हुआ, right? They went on tours and trips like crazy. Why? जाना भी नहीं था, मन भी नहीं है. They don't have the actual will to go, but they are going. Why are you going? We have not been anywhere for these many days. Do you like it? It doesn't matter. I have to go. What is that? Pent up. Right? So the pent up demand, the demand which was suppressed due to various factors during the pandemic years, it is back. This can be seen in the increase in personal loans. The personal loans have increased. What are personal loans? Remember, personal loans are not just about what? The personal loans which are based on salary. When I say personal loans, it includes housing loans, automobile loans, all those loans. They have increased. Has increased from both the private sector as well as the public sector. The public sector more. The government's capital expenditure has increased by great margins in the last few years. There is a high construction activity going on by the government side. So capex from the government side, a lot of construction activity, and it is not only by the central government, it is both by the central as well as the state governments. The capex has increased. Okay. So states generally do not give a push to capital expenditure. What is capital expenditure? Creating assets basically, right? Spending on creation of assets. States generally were spending more on revenue side. They also have started to spend more on capital side. Why are they spending more on capital side? One of the major reasons, remember, is the central government giving assistance. Assistance from central government. In what form? It has given interest-free loans for 50 years. 50 years का interest-free loans दिया for the states to create assets. States will give back after 50 years. So over 50 years, you can keep paying them, paying back the central government. Till then, it is free, no interest. So that is why state governments have also increased capex. Significantly, the central government's capex has increased in the last two budgets, and it has continued in the present budget as well. So +1. Since last two budgets, capex has increased by the central government, more so in the present government as well. Related to capex, there is a particular word. There's a high chance you may get that word in the questions as well as in your prelims examination. That particular word. That word is effective capex. The word is effective capex. What is that? So, question kaisa hoga? What is the meaning of pent up demand? Right? Pent up demand. You have 4 options. Or you may get a question like, what is effective capital expenditure? Very simple question. Right? Only if you know the meaning you can answer. Right? So what is this effective capital expenditure? So I wrote here +1. What is this +1? This year also the capex has increased. Total, it has reached 10 lakh crore. Right? Previous year, how much was the capex? 7.5 crore, 7.5 lakh crore. This time it is 10 lakh crore capex of the central government. This is what? Central government's capex. Now I told you another word. What is effective capex? What is effective capex? We are going to look at it in the graphs as well. Right? I'll just tell you now. Do you remember revenue deficit? Do you remember revenue deficit? Which chapter? Fiscal policy chapter. What is revenue deficit? Revenue expenditure minus revenue receipts is revenue deficit. I had told you something called as effective revenue deficit. Do you remember? What is effective revenue deficit? Revenue deficit minus grants given to states for capital creation. Correct? Yes. It's the same thing. We just have to take the same grants given to states for capital creation, add it to the capex of the center. That's all. So effective capex is equal to center's capex. Capex is how much? 10 lakh crore. How much is effective capex? It has to be more than 10 lakh crore. That effective capex for the upcoming year is 13.7 lakh crore, which basically means the central government is giving 3.7 lakh crore to state governments for capital asset creation. Done? Understood? Now, how much is it as a proportion of GDP? Your capex as a proportion of GDP is somewhere around 3.7% of GDP. Right? It is 3.7% of GDP. What is this capex? How much is effective capex? Effective capex will be more than that. It is 4.5%. Right? As a proportion of GDP, it is 3.7% and 4.5%. 3.7, 3.6%. Okay? Done. How many are done? 1, 2, 3, 4. So, why the central government is pushing for capex? Why is it pushing for capex? Capital expenditure, why is it pushing so much? Okay. 2 important reasons why the central government is pushing for capex. 2 important reasons. 1. Whenever capital expenditure happens from the government side, it creates infrastructure. Basic infrastructure if the central government is providing. like roads, railways, and all if it is providing, right? Waterways, development, and telecommunications if it is laying the lines, right? If everything is being done by the government, basic infrastructure, if the government is creating, don't you think crowding in of investment will happen? Yes or no? Investments will, private sector investments will come in. They will crowd in to make investments. Yes or no? Agreed. That is one. Why should we do this? Why should we attract the private sector to make more investments? It becomes all the more important because the government has taken a route of strategic disinvestment. The government is taking a step out of various sectors, saying that I will not be in this sector anymore. That creates a vacancy. Who will fill this vacancy? The private sector has to fill this vacancy. The private sector will fill the vacancy more if infrastructure is ready. That infrastructure will be provided by whom? The government. Yes, that is capex. Done. Next. This high level of capex for the government has been possible for a particular reason. How is the government able to spend more on capex now? The survey argues that we are able to spend more because of the tax buoyancy. Tax collections have been good. The government is able to collect more tax. How is it able to collect more tax? Because of the reforms it has taken in relation to taxation. For example, GS-3, right? Technology-backed tax collection. Because of this, tax buoyancy has increased. Okay? Now tell me, what is tax buoyancy?
Ratio of percentage in taxes to
Okay. So, can you say this? The increase in the tax revenue in relation to the growth of an economy, right? In relation to the growth of the economy. So, if the growth of the economy is happening and if the tax collections are also increasing, we say there is tax buoyancy. Basically, the changes you make also should lead to what? Tax revenue. So, buoyancy, remember, do not restrict your understanding only to growth. Buoyancy will happen when tax revenue increases as a result of the changes you make in the tax policy as well as the growth of the economy. You bring some changes in the tax policy, that is leading to what? Revenue growth. You bring GDP growth, because of that also tax collection increases. In either case, we say what? Tax buoyancy has happened. Right? Do not limit it to the understanding of GDP only. Okay? Done. Next. Because of this, the private sector investment has increased. The private sector also is investing in what? Investing as in it is coming up with new firms, new investment. So basically that is also capital expenditure. Right? If the private sector makes an investment, is it capex or not? That is capex. If it is starting a new firm, new branch, it is capex itself. That also has increased because of this. Done. So what can we expect in the future? The government has increased the effective capex. Can we expect more capex from the private sector? Yes. Can we expect more growth? Yes, we can expect. Now, how many are done? 4 are done, right? See, do not look at these aspects as something which is for only prelims. If you have an understanding of all these aspects, your brain will automatically lead you to the answers in the prelims examination. At the same time, you will be able to write the mains answers as well. Do not expect questions like, sir, you have said this point, on this will there be a prelims question? No, it will not be like that. Have you ever seen, if you have seen the previous year questions, have you ever seen a statement which is given in the textbook coming directly? Nahi aata hai. It is based on understanding. Yes? Okay. 5th point, strong corporate balance sheet. So, because of the strong corporate balance sheets, what would happen? Can they get loans more easily or more difficult? They can get the loans more easily. Will they have to pay more interest or less interest? Less interest. Why? Because their balance sheets are clean. Yes? So, investments will be more or less? Investments will be more. Connected to this, strength of banking sector. Is it more or less? As of now, banking sector strength, has it increased or decreased? Why has it increased now? Why? The NPAs have gone down. Why did the NPAs go down? Because of the measures taken by the government. IBC, most importantly. Right? NPA level was as high as how much? 2016-17 NPA levels what? To the tune of 1 lakh crores. Yes? So which is almost like 10% se upar tha. 9%, 10% it was hovering. Presently, the NPAs have come down to as low as 5%. So, banks have more elbow room, more freedom to give loans. Why? Because their balance sheets are clean, which means better investment will happen. And finally, so you have to understand this in another context as well. Why it becomes important, strength of the bank, why it becomes important, is that, see, what are the ways in which a corporate sector, if you are running a firm, in what ways can you get the money for investment? One is loans from the banks. What is the other way? Shares. What is the other way? Issuing bonds. Correct? So, either shares or bonds or loans. So, you have 3 ways. Either shares or bonds or loans. Of these, which is the easiest way to get the money? This is the easiest way to get the money. Restrictions are lesser. The most difficult way to get the money, which is the most difficult way to get the money? Shares is the most difficult way. Not every firm will be allowed to issue shares. Done. So, you are left with bonds and loans. Remember, I told you something in the starting. Challenges mein kuch bole the. Inflation is increasing. Because of inflation, what is happening? Bond yields are rising. Government bond yields are rising, as well as the corporate sector bond yields also was rising. If they are rising, will they find it easy to borrow or difficult to borrow? Difficult to borrow because they have to pay more interest rate. Agreed or no? So, corporate bonds are costly now, as in for them to borrow, they have to pay more interest rate. So, what is the other recourse they can take? either shares or loans. Loans were not available till almost last year. Why? Because the balance sheets were not clean. अभी clean हो गया है. Though these bond prices are decreasing, yields are increasing, we don't worry. Why? Because our banks are ready. Agreed? Clear? Yes? इसलिए ये important. Right? While the inflation is increasing, right? While the inflation is increasing, the yields are increasing, corporate bonds are not attractive. But no worries, we have the loans available by the banks. Why? Because the banks are in a better position. And finally, ability to tackle inflation. Or ability to tackle inflation. Though it has been beyond the ability of the RBI, it expects it to be somewhere around 6.8% for the entire FY23, which is more than what it started. Still, it's not too high for what? It's not too high for people to get worried. That is, investors to get worried. At the same time, it's not too low as well. But in the context of the world economy, if you compare to other economies, this is very much under control itself. In relative terms, it is very much under control. And given the strength of our banking system, given the regulatory powers of RBI and its expertise, we are better placed to tackle inflation. So risks for what? For inflation in the upcoming year are lesser. Right? Upward risks for inflation are lesser, so we need not worry about it. So, growth drivers, 7. Okay, there's a message.
Some
Issue. Okay. Did you have your breakfast yet? Okay, fine. Domestic stimulus, vaccination coverage, pent-up demand, capex development, strong corporate balance sheet, yes, strength of banking sector, inflation, ability to manage inflation. So, next. India's inclusive growth. Today we will try to complete two chapters. Second chapter is smaller. Second chapter is smaller. Third chapter is huge. It's a huge chapter. It's a huge chapter because there are so many graphs you have to go through. And remember this. See, once you know the meaning, right? Once you understand the concept, after that reading the graph becomes easier, right? So reading the graph, it's not like you have to remember the data. You have to just remember the trend. I will tell you in each graph what you are supposed to remember. Okay, in each graph what you are supposed to remember. Remember only that. There's no point in remembering all the data. So sometimes what happens is people have made sheets of data, right, related to so many things which is not required. Okay, they don't ask you questions on that. Yes? Okay. India's inclusive growth. What is this about? So our resilience is because of this inclusive growth path we have taken. Different ways in which you can bring inclusive growth is providing jobs. Job creation is the best way of bringing inclusive growth. Okay, now tell me what is inclusive growth. What is inclusive growth?
Including various sections of the society.
Okay. See, what is growth? GDP growth,
Fruits are
right?
distributed.
Roots of growth, sorry, fruits of growth are distributed amongst all the people, right? Basically, you make everyone the part of the growth story. That is inclusive growth, right? So, how do you ensure that? By creating jobs. By creating jobs. Now, has inclusive growth happened in India or not? Economic survey says yes. We have some evidence. What is the evidence? Urban employment has increased. There is an uptick in the urban employment. According to which survey? PLFS. Do you know PLFS? Periodic Labor Force Survey. We'll look at the graph, don't worry. Even the labor force participation rate has increased. Right? That also has improved. What is labor force participation rate? What is labor force participation rate? LFPR. People who are already employed plus people who are seeking job. That would be your labor force participation rate. Yes? This job creation, we can expect more jobs to be created in the near future. The survey says there are 3 reasons why jobs can be created more in the near future. One is exports can create more jobs. This is one way. Second, we spoke about pent-up demand. Remember? This also can create more jobs. And three, capex. But exports are the ones which actually have created the job already. Right? In the recent past, in the last 2-3 years, it has created jobs. But now it is slowing down. So we can't trust exports to create more jobs in the near future. It has already done its job. In the near future, we can't expect. Why? Because exports are going to fall. They have already started to fall. Right? Why exports will fall? The global growth. Second, pent-up demand. What about this? What is pent-up demand? The demand which was suppressed because of the pandemic years. It has increased. Contact-based services, it has increased. But don't you think that pent-up demand is going to be a temporary one? That also is reducing. The only solution to create more jobs in the near future is capex, and the government is working on it. Right? With capex, more demand will be generated, more employment will be generated. Yes. For inclusive growth, one more thing that is important is your MSME. Promotion of MSME. So for the promotion of MSME, there are many schemes that have been launched. One of the most important scheme, which your survey mentions in the first chapter itself. Emergency Credit Line Guarantee Scheme. Emergency Credit Line Guarantee Scheme. So it was announced in 21 during the pandemic. Okay. So what was this for? What was this for? emergency credit line guarantee, which means the government is going to give the guarantee to the banks. You give loans to MSME. If they don't pay back, I am here. I'll take care of it. I'll pay to you. Emergency credit line guarantee scheme. Because of this, the banks came forward to give more loans to MSME. If there was no such guarantee, will the banks give loans to MSME? No. Okay. Next. Because of this, one important thing happened is the most important thing that happened. A good thing, you can say a ripple effect of this was that micro enterprises were able to get loans, right, rather easily. When they got loans, they created jobs. They made investment and they created jobs. At the same time, one more thing that happened is that because they are taking loans, in order to take the loan, what do they need? They have to register, right? Formal. They have to become formal. When they become formal, they file tax returns as well. So, formalization of the economy was also it was a positive outcome. If you want a loan in the bank, what do you need? You need proper documentation. For documentation, you have to get registered. Right? So they became a part of GS-3 network as well. Next. So this is the reason what the survey says is that presently the MSMEs are paying more GST than they used to pay before the pandemic. They are paying more GST than what they used to pay before the pandemic. Which means more MSMEs have become a part of GST. The other thing which it speaks of is Jayanagara. Jayanagara for inclusive growth. PM Kisan. Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. Okay. A result of all these inclusive growth is shown in your NFHS 5 survey. National Family Health Survey 5. In this report, health indicators have been upbeat. There have been improvements in the health indicators. We are going to look at that as well later. So that we are going to look at in a particular chapter called Big Tent. Big Tent chapter. The Big Tent is about providing a shelter to whom? To the disadvantaged sections. In that chapter, you are going to come across all the schemes, the health indicators, health related, education related, skill related, all of it. Okay, Jayanagara, you know. PM Kisan, do you know PM Kisan? What is PM Kisan? Kisan Samman Nidhi. What is Kisan Samman Nidhi? 6,000 rupees every year. Okay. Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, free food drinks since the pandemic year. Right? That has been extended as well. Only for certain sections of the society. Right? NFHS 5 survey that is about the health indicators, that is your infant mortality rate, maternal mortality rate, and the life expectancy, right? All these, indicators and their values, you will find it in that survey. We are going to look at that in a different chapter. That is about India's inclusive growth. Done. Next is India's position, outlook, budget inputs. Okay. India's position. Next. Is it in a good position, bad position? Obviously, whenever you look at the survey, okay, it will always argue what India is in good position itself. So, presently, in PPP terms, what is India's rank? Huh? Third rank. How much is the GDP in PPP terms? 9. Roughly बोले थे हम. हाँ. Presently, how much is it? 11 trillion dollars. Roughly. Okay, now the question is what is PPP terms? GDP at PPP. It is 11 trillion almost. Which is the other one? Nominal GDP. In nominal GDP, what is India's rank? 5th rank. Which country did it surpass? UK. How much is nominal GDP? 3.5 trillion. Done. Survey says that India's position as of now. Yes, India has nearly recouped what was lost. It has recouped what was lost. 2. Which is the other R? Renewed what was actually paused. Renewed what was paused. What was paused? Reforms were paused for some time. We are renewing them. Whatever was lost, we have recollected them. And finally, re-energize. We are re-energizing the growth engines which had come to a standstill. Right? We are re-energizing the growth engines. So India's position presently, PPP terms, 3rd rank, nominal GDP, 5th rank, and with this we are standing here. We are doing these things. Okay. GDP and PPP, nominal GDP. Do you remember the meaning? Yes, clearly. Yes. Okay. Next, what is the next thing? Outlook. 23, 24 के लिए what outlook do we have? Outlook. Because we have a quick recovery happening, plus solid domestic demand. Did we mention these things already? Quick recovery, solid domestic demand. Yes. With these two things, plus high capex, the growth prospects look very much positive, at least in relation to other countries. Second, in the first decade of 21st century, there was excess lending by the institutions. Basically, over-leveraged lending was there and it caused all the problems. The problems have now been corrected. With the correction of the problems, plus the government capex, the private sector capex is going to increase. It will eventually lead to higher growth. Growth looks up big because of this as well. That is the second. Yes. Over leveraged. What have we done? We have deleveraging. We have done deleveraging. Bank balance sheets are also clean, because of which what there is a high chance they are going to lend more. Along with that, government capex is also increased. It facilitates investment. Yes. Government capex has increased so much so that since 2016 itself till 2022, that is what the survey covers, right? Till 2022, it is 2.7x, 2.7 times more. 2016, if you compare it to 2022-23, it has increased by 2.7 times. What? Capital expenditure. So if it was spending 1 lakh crore back then, it was spending how much now? 2.7 lakh crore. 2.7 times more. Spending in the span of how many years? 6 years. 6-7 years. It has increased so much spending on capex. Why increase in spending? Capex. 2 reasons. Remember, what are the 2 reasons? Crowding in private investment. 2, whatever vacancy has been created because of the strategic disinvestment, that vacancy has to be, covered by whom? The private investment. That is all. Next, will be better because of some of the reforms undertaken by the government. Right? Some of the reforms undertaken by the government will lead to more transparency, more fiscal discipline, and better efficiency. So, transparency in what sense? Transparency in what sense? In terms of governance. Discipline in what sense? In terms of government spending. Efficiency in what sense? Allocation of resources. So, what steps has it taken? It has taken so many steps. We are going to cover them even as we go through the chapters. Budget में भी वो provisions आ रहा है. So you can think of GS-3, you can think of your IBC. They are all what? They are all reform measures itself. Outlook for India in terms of numbers, GDP numbers. What did I tell you? How is the outlook? Both your IMF and NSO expects the outlook for India between what? 6.5% to 7% range. The advantages India is riding on for these things to materialize, why should we be optimistic? Why should we be optimistic that these things will work for India? India has some advantages. That is why. What advantages does it have? So that this outlook, whatever we are stating, will come true. What advantages? One advantage is the rebound of capex. By whom? Rebound of capex by private sector mostly. This is one advantage. Second advantage are recovering. The global supply chains are recovering, which were disrupted because of 2 things. One is pandemic, the other one is Russia-Ukraine crisis. They are back on track. Supply chains are back on track. They are working better now. Chances are that they are only going to become better in the coming year. What are capital flows? FDI, FPI flow into India. That is also better. FDI, FPI inflow is better. Basically, attractive destination for investment. So, riding on these advantages, the chances are that the outlook predicted by the economic survey will be more or less achieved. So, can we say it is a positive outlook for India? Yes. This is what the survey predicts. So, economic growth remains resilient. What you are supposed to learn from this graph? What are you supposed to learn? Look at this. What is this? This is absolute GDP. Correct? What is absolute GDP? Absolute GDP in the sense? Absolute GDP in the sense GDP numbers. Right? Quantity. I am talking about quantity. How much is it? 145 lakh crore. Yes, it came down. It became 135 lakh crore. Yes or no? When was it? 21, pandemic year. And then again it rose. It rose to probably 147, 148 lakh crore. And it rose again. Right? It rose again to how much? 155 lakh crore. But can you see this dotted line? What is this dotted line? FY20 level. Right? FY20 level. Did we breach that already in FY22 or not? Yes, we have breached it already. And we are beyond that now. But more important for us is this line. ये वाला line है ना? This one is more important for us. That is the growth rate line. Okay, that is the growth rate line. So, a small dip led to a large dip in the growth rate. Yes or no? Because it is negative. And then a small recovery, only this much recovery, but look at the growth rate recovery. It is huge. And despite this recovery happening and increasing, why did this number drop? Why did the graph drop? Why is it? It is because of the base effect. We are saying that this is going to remain almost the same in the upcoming year as well. FY24, the graph is going to continue like this. Right? Probably like this. At the same level almost. 7% के आसपास. This is what we are saying. All you have to look at is, did we cross the pre-pandemic output level in FY22 itself or not? Yes, we crossed it. Right? What growth is this? Real GDP, not nominal GDP. This is real GDP. Now, growth rate, how much is it? Look at this. Negative kitna tha? Minus 6.7, right? Minus 6.7. And how much was the growth rate in FY22? How much is it? 9%. Right? It is 10%. Yes? 10% let's assume. How much is the growth rate in FY23? Look at this. Maybe 7%? Yes? Somewhere around 7%, 6.87%. We are saying it is going to maintain the same level. Starting from FY19, if you look at it, all the other sectors have gone down and up, except for one sector, which is that agriculture and allied activities. It has remained positive, whereas industry has gone into the negative, service has gone into the negative. Service went into more negative than industry. When was this? Look at this. FY21. Why? Why did it go negative? Because services are based mostly on what? Contact. Right? So people to people contact is more. For example, tourism. It's a service. Yes? During the pandemic, services were hit the most. So that saw the maximum negative. At the same time, manufacturing units had to be closed, whereas agriculture continued to remain in the positive zone. It never went into the negative. That's all you need to remember. You need not remember what? The numbers. You just have to remember this. Okay? Now, average growth rate एक बार देख लीजिए, right? These are GBA components. GDP components also will look the same. Okay, now GDP, GBA. What is the difference? GDP, GBA. What is the difference? Fast. GDP, GBA. Okay, GDP is equal to GBA plus taxes minus subsidies. That's all. Okay, whatever GBA you get, you get GBA at what prices? You get it at basic prices. Right? Whatever GDP you get it at what prices? Market prices. So this number, how did you get it? You got it using expenditure method. Correct? Expenditure method is demand side or supply side? Expenditure method is demand side or supply side? Demand side. You track the expenditure. expenditure is on the basis of what? Demand. Always expenditure method is what? Demand side. Right? Expenditure method is on the basis of demand side. You got GDP at MP using expenditure method. What is this calculation? This is demand side calculation based on the demand side. From the supply side, how do you calculate? From the supply side, you calculate on the gross value added method. So this is supply side calculation. But what do you get? You get only GVA at BP for every sector. But that is not equal to what GDP. You can't compare. So what do? You add taxes. What taxes do you add, by the way? Product taxes and product subsidies. Remember, you add product taxes, subtract product subsidies. What do you get? GDP at MP. Clear? So, simple. GDP at MP. How did you get it? You use the expenditure method. Because you are using the expenditure method, it is demand side calculation. So, how did you get this number? C plus I plus G plus X minus M. This is how you got this number. But we can calculate the national income from the supply side as well. How can we calculate it from the supply side? We can calculate GVA. When we calculate the GVA, the maximum we can get is GVA at basic prices. For agriculture sector, for industry sector and for services sector. That is what you get. But if you want to compare these two, you can't compare. How can you compare? Only when this also is converted to GDP somehow. How do you convert it into GDP? You just add what? Product taxes minus product subsidies. Then this will be called what? GDP at market prices. That's all. Now if you compare these two, you'll get to understand, okay, is there a variation or not? Right? So, it is calculated from which side? Supply side. Very important. So, this is calculation of national income itself, but from which side? From the supply side calculation. So, when we look at it, how is the growth rate for agriculture? It has remained in the positive. Average, average. It comes around 3.5. Yes, 3.5. Somewhere around 3.5 average. Industry and your services, it has gone into the negative as well, right? You need not remember the average, not required, right? So agriculture has been consistently growing in the positive for the last how many years? 3, 4, 5 years, right? It has been in the positive. Done. Next. In this, you just have to remember greater than, as soon as less than. That's all you have to do. So basically, India's PFC is greater than GFCF. GFCF is greater than exports. Exports is less than imports. Basically, these are components of what? These are components of GDP. That is GDP calculation. C plus I plus D plus X minus M. This is your C. What is C? Private consumption. What is this? PFC, private final consumption expenditure. What is this? GFCF, gross fixed capital formation. That is your investment. This is exports. This is imports. Where is the other one? Government expenditure. Where is it? It is minimal. It is relatively minimal. That is why that is not included. Right? So basically, this will be more than this. This will be more than this, and then you have government final consumption expenditure as well in between. That will be less than GFC. Okay. So this is C plus I plus G plus X M. Done. So you have to remember the highest. Highest contribution is by what? C. Which is that? PFC. I told you one more point. What was the point? Domestic driven, domestic stimulus. Where is it coming from? This one. I told you since 2014, when you look at it, this number has been the highest in any year. Yes? Yeah. Look at this. You can see this here itself. Highest 2023. From 2014 it's, if you compare, still it is highest. Done. Next. Remember only the points I tell you. Other things, don't worry. What is this? This is the world growth. This is not India's growth. This is the world GDP growth. What it shows is that as the trade increases in the world GDP also increases. If the trade volume falls, the GDP also falls. Right? If trade increases in the world, that is, if countries start exporting and importing more, the GDP of the entire world also keeps increasing. If the trade volume falls, the amount of transactions related to exports and imports, if they are falling, GDP also keeps falling. Whose GDP? The world GDP. That is what is shown. Look at this. This is your GDP growth. It fell. When did it fall? It fell in 2020, right? And again it started rising. So along with that, look at the trade volume. Even as it rises, also rises. That's all you need to remember. Only one point. If trade increases, GDP increases or not? GDP increases. That's all. If it falls, this also falls. What happened when? Don't worry. Inflation. Because we were speaking of inflation, right? This is India's inflation itself. Look at this. What has happened? Now, very simple question I'll ask you. This is CPI all India, and this is CPI food inflation. Okay. If this CPI all India inflation is going up, along with that food inflation is also going up, it means the food items are the ones which are causing what? Inflation. On the other hand, if food items prices are falling, that is CPI food is falling like this, but inflation is up. What does this mean? Non-food items are causing the inflation. Yes? What can you observe from August 22? What can you observe from August 22? From August 22, look at this, the food inflation has dropped. Right? The CPI also was falling, but it was not falling as fast as the food inflation. Right? Food inflation fell faster, whereas CPI inflation did not fall fast. Overall, it did not fall fast. Why? Because there was inflation in non-food. Food inflation started cooling down, but inflation in other items, they remained what? Rather resistant. They became stubborn. Yes? Look at this. The more the divergence. See, if this saffron line is up, it means food inflation is the one which is leading the CPI all India inflation. If the saffron line is down, right, whereas this blue line is up, it is not the food inflation which is pushing it. It is the non-food items. Clear? That's all you have to understand from this graph. Next. So if they ask you a question, in the last 3 quarters, right, food inflation is the reason behind high CPI. Is the answer right? No, it is not. Understood? Next. Current account deficit. Widening current account deficit. So in all the cases, do we have deficit or is there a positive somewhere? Current account surplus, do you find it somewhere? Is there a surplus somewhere? Current account surplus. Look at this. If this blue line, right, total is above 0. This is the total line. Total line is above 0, right? Which means it is surplus. So you have surplus in 2 quarters, right? Quarter 3 said, there was a surplus here. Only 3 quarters we have had surplus, current account surplus. Since when? 2020. Only 3 quarters. In all the other quarters we have what? Deficit. And look at the current account deficit. It has become steeper and steeper. Negative is becoming more. Why is it more? Why is it more? Look at this. Primary income, secondary income. Yeah. Which is the one which causes maximum current account deficit? Which causes maximum current account deficit? Goods and services balance. So what is this goods and services balance? Export-import balance, right? Export and import in goods and services. That creates the maximum problem. Look at this, that is the major head. That is the one which is in maximum negative. Next. Primary income, secondary income, do you remember? What is primary income? Income from factors of production. Land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. What do you earn from land? Rent. Labor, wages. Capital, interest. Entrepreneurship, profits. Whatever you earn from these things, we call it as what? Primary income. Whatever we earn from other things, how else do we earn? How else do we earn? Remittance area. Remittance. Now that is transfers. What are transfers which you get for free?
So remittance is also.
Now, there are two ways of looking at it. If you sit here and earn, send all the money here or earn all the money here itself. Say for example, you go to a foreign country on 1 month. For 1 month you go there, right? You take the salary and come back here. What is it? It is wages. If you stay there and send money for someone here freely, then what is it called? Transfer. In transfer, you have remittance and grants. Right? We generally call this head as remittances and transfers. But transfers you have to. Remittances and grants. Right? So, this is what? Secondary income. Whatever you get for free is secondary income. Yes? Done? So, CAD is negative because of what? Mostly because of depreciation, and maximum is because of your goods and services. Goods and services में negative है. Right? Total trade turns out to be negative. हाँ, उसमें goods and services में maximum negative किसमें? Goods or services? Because of the goods itself. We import more goods, export less goods. Whereas services, we export more, import less. But overall, goods and services, when we look at it, our imports will be more itself. Because we have so many imports of goods. Next. So, statement kaisa aayega? If they ask a question, their questions will be like this. The forex reserves of India have been gradually increasing since February 2021 or February 2022. Gradually increasing. The forex reserves have been above $500 billion since FY21. Yes, no? Absolutely yes. Now you may ask, sir, what if they ask before that? They will not ask. If they frame a question, they are going to frame the question within what? The graphs that are available. Available where? In the economic survey. Okay. They are not going to ask the question outside the graph. Okay. If they ask the question outside the graph, then they are asking the question on fundamentals itself. Yes? Now, let's suppose we have $560 billion as forex reserves. how much import cover can it provide? What is import cover? What is import cover? If you don't earn dollars, that is you don't export at all, you have this much. For how long is it sufficient? You continue importing but not exporting. For how long is it sufficient? This much money. How many months? How much was this when we had the BOP crisis? 15 days. It was 15 days. Now it is 9 months. What the survey says is that share of exports as a part of your GDP. How much is it? This number is important. Remember this number. How much is it? How much? Lagbhag 23-24%. Yes? So remember, more than 20%. That is sufficient. Share of exports in GDP is more than 20%. Share of imports in GDP. If the export-import gap is increasing, it means current account deficit is increasing. Look at this. The current account deficit will be very less here. The gap has increased. The gap is widening as we move further. Which is leading what? Exports are being led by imports. Exports lag imports all the time. See, there has been only one instance. Look at this. One instance. You know why this happened? Even because of the lockdowns. Because of lockdowns, we had stopped the imports. When you stop the imports, imports are done. Exports, to some extent, it will be happening. So what will happen now? There will be excess of exports. That was only for a short period of time. Then again we open up. Done? Clear? So these numbers are important. Percentage of GDP. You have to remember. Okay, you can use it in the answers. Next, they may ask you a question. If the gap between exports and imports is increasing, right? What does it mean? It means current account deficit is increasing. Yes? Next. Okay, this is the graph what here and there. But this is what the forecasts given by various institutions across the world. Standard & Poor's, Fitch, Moody's, Goldman Sachs, RBI, IMF, OECD. What do you observe? It is more than 6.5 in every case. Every case, more than 6.5. 6.5 to 7. Done? This is what I was speaking about. Look at this. PFC highest. Starting from FY15, you can go back. Even FY13, if you start, PFCE has been the highest, 59.2. That is the highest. What is the reason? One of the main reasons is pent-up demand. Right? People are like, you just give us opportunity, we will go on leave, we will spend. They have become like that. This one, urban unemployment rate, right? It is falling. I told you earlier. Yes? Employment rate is increasing, is what I said. Unemployment rate is falling. Look at this. So continuously it is falling. This is a positive. How much is it? You have to remember the number for this. It is 7.2. Unemployment rate is 7.2. It was at a peak. Look at this. 20.9. When was this? When was it? It was during the pandemic. You have so many graphs. If you open the economic survey, you have so many graphs. Just look into only these graphs. I will give you this PowerPoint presentation. You just look into these graphs only. Okay. Other graphs, they are not necessary. Why? Because, see, some of the graphs you may feel they are essential, but the problem is they don't have the entire data. Entire data in the sense, they compare quarter to quarter, or they compare, most of the comparisons you find in the economic survey are from January to September. of this year compared to January to September of last year, or from June to December of this year compared to June to December of last year. Now that data you can't use. That data they can't use to ask questions also. So we are going to take only that data which is relevant for us. Yes? I think I need not go into the details as to basics of budget. Do you remember the basics of budget? Keep answering. Annual financial statement, it is called. Article number 112. Okay. Is the word budget mentioned in the constitution or not? Nowhere mentioned. Okay. Who produces budget? Who creates budget? Finance ministry. हाँ, उसमें कौन सा department? अब बोलो. Which department creates budget? Department of Economic Affairs. Same. Department of Economic Affairs creates budget. Budget is classified into two broad heads. Which are the two broad heads? In budget, you have two parts. One is called the Part A, the other one is called the Part B. Where what is the priority of the government for the next year? What are the schemes the government is launching? How much allocation is happening? All of that will be in Part A. So for various sectors, allocation, what schemes, all of it will be in Part A. What is the reason behind the scheme? All of it in Part A. Part B. Major documents which are produced by the finance minister while during the budget. One is annual financial statement, Article 112, right? Apart from annual financial statement, he also has this something called as demand for grants, right? So, what is this demand for grants? Demand for grants as in each ministry, right? Each department, they will have placed before the finance minister this much money I require, right? The same demands after making some small changes, the finance minister places it before the parliament for discussion. This demand for grants, which article? Annual financial statement. 2. Demand for grants. What else? Finance bill. इसके बाद क्या है? Appropriation bill. Is there anything else? Now you have FRBM. FRBM Act mandates some of the documents to be placed before the parliament. So 1, 2, 3, 4 इसके साथ under FRBM you have other documents to be placed. Okay. What they have done now is these two they place it together. Medium term fiscal policy statement and fiscal policy strategy statement. This strategy statement is generally for the next 1 year. Medium term is for 3 years, right? And macroeconomic framework statement is about, explanatory one, right? It is more about explanatory, as in what will be the impact of the fiscal policy measures we take on the entire economy. That is macroeconomic framework statement. 23-24. This is the first budget for the Amrit Kal. What is Amrit Kal? Amrit, the moment you hear the word Amrit, it is 75, related to 75. So, 75 to 100 is known as the Amrit Kal. 75 to 100. What is 75? 75th year of independence. यहाँ से लेके 100th year तक. It is considered Amrit Kal by the government of India. This is the first budget in Amrit Kal. First budget for Amrit Kal. Okay. Second, growth and job creation. Third, strong and stable macroeconomic environment. To create an economy which is inclusive, this will create an economy which is inclusive as well as empowered. An empowered and inclusive economy it will create. If these three things are done, there will be some outcomes. Or we can say some transformative opportunities will be created. some opportunities will be created. What opportunities? One, tapping the potential of tourism will be possible if we, follow this vision. Green growth will be possible. These are the opportunities we have. So, women, artisans, what was next? Tourism, green growth. These two are untapped as of now. They can be tapped completely if we follow this vision. That is what we are supposed to do in Amrit Kaal. Then the growth will be inclusive and it will be empowered. Budget 23-24. These are the 7 priority sectors. It is called the Saptarshi. 7 priority sectors. The first priority is inclusive development. Under this, you have 3 things. You better write them down. 3 things. 1. Health for all. Basically, for 23-24 budget, these are the priority sectors. Okay. So, first priority sector is inclusive development. In that, you have first one, health for all. Second, empowering agriculture. Empowering agriculture. That is the second. Third, accessing education. Accessing education and skills. Skill development. These 3. Next is reaching last mile. The second one, priority, reaching last mile. No one will be left behind. As the name suggests, it means what? Inclusive growth again. Aspirational districts program. Yes. So it speaks of aspirational districts program and now aspirational blocks program as well. Aspirational districts, how many are there? 112. 112 aspirational districts. What are aspirational districts? The most backward districts in India. They are aspirational districts. Now they have had a lot of improvement across various factors, especially health, education, environment. They have improved better because the government had focused on these districts. Now what the government is saying is that अब district का हो गया. In those at block level, some of the blocks are left behind. What is a block? Taluk. Some of the taluks are left behind. Try to develop them, more focus, micro level focus. So that is one. Second, it speaks of Ekalavya model residential schools. Ekalavya model residential schools. Ekalavya schools, what are they for? Tribal children. Next is Bharat Shri. Bharat Shri. There is PM Shri as well. This is Bharat Shri. Shared repository of inscriptions. Shared repository of inscriptions. Pradhan Mantri PVTG. What is PVTG? Particularly vulnerable tribal groups. Development Mission. PM PVTG Development Mission. Water for drought prone regions. This is another focus area here. Next, AY, this PM Awas Yojana, and then support to prisoners. Which prisoners? Poor prisoners. What support? They don't generally get the bail. Often they find it really difficult to get the legal help, right? So they don't get the trial dates as well. quickly. So you have to be supported इसलिए कुछ steam लेके आए हैं. So reaching the last mile has these components. Now, when you are learning the schemes, right? When you are learning the schemes, focus on these. Whichever schemes I mentioned in the budget, learn only those schemes in detail. All the other schemes, learn only one line. All the schemes I have mentioned here, you have to know the details. Now, sir, what details we have to learn? What details? What details you tell me? First, which ministry? Two, who are the beneficiaries? One ministry, two beneficiaries. What else? What else? Objective. Objective. Central sector or centrally sponsored scheme. Done. Now in provisions, leave aside all the general provisions. If there are any exceptions mentioned, then only learn them. Don't waste too much time because you have more than 350 schemes. Okay, you have more than 350 schemes. Even in your budget document, you have all the schemes mentioned. As in, towards the end, allocation के लिए, the budget document gives how much allocation has been made for each of the schemes, right? So there they are mentioned. But just because it is in that document, you are not supposed to learn. Wherever the budget speech mentions a particular scheme, then only you have to learn it. Otherwise, it will be wasteful spending of your energy and time. Okay? Right? So all these details. What details? One, ministry. Two, beneficiaries. Objective. Then provisions which are exceptional. And then centrally sponsored or central sector. Right? Yes. Next. Youth power. Okay. For this, obviously, what is that? How to unleash the youth power? Skills. Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. National Apprentice Promotion Scheme. National Apprenticeship Promotion Scheme. Apprenticeship. Apprenticeship क्या होता है? You are given an opportunity to have a hands-on experience at the job, right? Next, Unified Skill India digital platform. Unified Skill India digital platform. What are all these things? We will learn as we go into the chapters. Setting up of Unity Mall in every state. Unity Mall in every state. Okay. Next is boosting tourism. Sir, how will it help you? Job opportunities. So they can earn money and they can spend money as well if tourism is promoted. So you can spend money so that demand is generated, right? Growth. So you earn and you spend. Next, financial sector. Credit guarantee for MSME. It has been mentioned again. Financial sector regulations. There have been changes. Financial sector regulations. A new savings certificate is being launched. Azadi का अमृत महोत्सव. आजादी का अमृत महोत्सव. महिला सम्मान बचत पत्र. महिला सम्मान बचत पत्र. आजादी का अमृत महोत्सव. That will be launched. आजादी का अमृत महोत्सव. महिला सम्मान बचत पत्र. Data embassy will be created. Data embassy. Where, when, how, we'll learn about it later. National Finance Information Registry. National Finance Information Registry, NFIR, that will be set up. These are all the things that have come in the budget which are important, which means you have to know the details of each of these. Okay. Many times we tend to feel like, sir, where did this question come from? They generally come from budget itself, as in economy related questions, which you feel like this we have never heard of. That generally comes from the budget itself. जैसे कि मैंने बोला effective capex, right? That has been in your budget as well. In budget also it is mentioned, effective capex. Okay. Next. This is next one, green growth. Govardhan. Heard of it? Govardhan. Govardhan scheme. That has been mentioned. Green hydrogen mission. Yes. Green hydrogen mission. Battery energy storage systems. Battery energy storage systems. Green credit program. MISTI. Heard of it? What is this for? Mangroves. MISTI. One more. Amrit Dharohar. Amrit Dharohar. What are these things? We will take up in the chapter itself. This is about governance. This is about governance. Good governance, transparency, accountability. इसके बारे में. Unleashing the potential. Okay, under this, so you can write governance and transparency, accountability. Next, infrastructure and investment, about which you know already. So investment के बारे में, capex के बारे में बात करते हैं. So this is that. So what we do now is we know the focus areas. Okay, what we will do is even as we go through the chapters, relevant topic we will take in that chapter. For example, unleashing the potential is about governance and transparency and accountability. This one we will take it up with the next chapter. And then we have financial sector that we will be taking up with monetary policy and financial intermediation chapter. There is one chapter related to that in your economic survey. Along with that we will take it. Sustainable development के बारे में एक chapter है economic survey. That then we will take up green growth. Yes. So big tent. There is a chapter on big tent. There is social sector. There we will take up inclusive development. Yes. So infrastructure and investment, industry का chapter है उसके साथ. Okay, we will complete this like that. And one more area which is most important in budget is related to your graphs. All the graphs related to fiscal policy, fiscal deficit कितना है, how much is it, what is the target, all of it. Okay, that one we will be taking up with the fiscal policy chapter itself. This is a fiscal policy chapter, that is the third chapter. With that we will take up everything related to budget. Where is the rupee coming from, where is the rupee going, how much is the tax collection, right? So how much is the tax collection, direct tax collection, how much is it? What percentage of GDP is the direct tax collection? Any idea? 5%. Direct tax collection is 5%. Indirect tax collection, direct tax collection is 6%. Indirect tax collection is 5%. Total 11% as a percentage of GDP. So these numbers become important. Okay. So these things we will be learning in the third chapter. We will cover till this part. What part? Intro and product and capital market. That's all we will cover. The rest of it we will leave it for tomorrow. So India's medium-term growth outlook with optimism and hope. This is the second chapter. What is this chapter about? This is the chapter about the reforms that have been taken in the previous generation. When we say the previous generation, before 1991 and after 1991. And in the new India, what is new India according to the survey? After 2014, it is considered new India. So in new India, what do we have? Right? What reforms have been undertaken? So reforms for new India. That's where it is at. Product and capital market reforms. This is the reforms before New India. That is 2014 se pehle. What are all the reforms were there? That will be here. After that, it will be here. And now, once we have taken the reforms, returns to economic and structural reforms, as in what are the returns we have got? Are they sufficient? Right? And what will be the future? And what does the budget say about it? In this chapter, we are going to talk about that governance part. Right? Governance related. So why do we have to talk about governance? Why? Because in the reforms for New India, we are going to talk about governance aspect as well. Okay? So because of that, I have put that governance related budget here. Fine. You should feel more energized so that we complete 4 chapters in the first day at least. Focus on the new terms. Anywhere you get, that is like 2 marks for you. New terms, 2 marks. You just have to know the term. That's about it. You just have to know the term. The moment you see the term in the paper, you get to understand, okay, this term I have seen. If you get that feeling, your answer will be right. Right? Especially new terms. Old terms, concept based. New terms, just knowing is sufficient. A lot of reforms have been undertaken. We call them new age reforms. The aim of these reforms that have been undertaken in the last 8 years are for 2 purposes. One is ease of doing business. The reforms aim at ease of doing business and also at the same time enhance EOL. What is EOL? Ease of living. Okay? But the reforms have not been able to achieve these 2 things at the pace we wanted them to. Why have they not been possible? Because there were temporary shocks plus debt overhang. Both these pulled the growth rate down. When we had the reforms, we implemented the reforms, they were supposed to give very good returns. But we were not able to get those good returns. Why? Because of the temporary shocks plus debt overhang. What is debt overhang? For the firms, there was too much debt. That is why they were not able to make investments. For the banks also, they were not able to recover the debts. That is why they were not able to give more loans. And then you have temporary shocks, pandemic, Eurozone, European issues. So, because of this, we were not able to achieve that EODB and EOL completely. To what extent they have been successful, right? What are the components of this ease of doing business EOL reforms? What are the components? All of it we'll learn later. But before that, we have to look at what all reforms we have undertaken so far. Before the new age reforms, were there any reforms at all? The period where the reforms start in India, 1991, initiation of the reforms. We consider that to be the starting period. Product market reforms and capital market reforms. What is product market reforms? Market, goods and services market reforms. Capital market. You know capital market. What is capital market? The stock market, right? One of the part is stock market. So, what reforms have been undertaken? The point is 1991. The reforms started just as a reaction to the 1991 BOP crisis. It was just a reaction. As a response to 1991 crisis. The reforms which we undertook there, they were called the LPG reforms. And the policy which we implemented then to implement those LPG reforms is called the New Economic Policy of 1991, NEP 1991. While we started to implement these reforms, the outcome was pretty good. This was seen between 93 to 2000 growth rate. The growth rate between 93 to 2000 increased to an average of 6.3%. 6.3% growth rate. Before this, previously, that is before 1993, if you consider almost 7-8 years, the growth rate was around 5%. Right? So the previous 7 years, if you consider, the growth rate was on an average 5%. After the reforms, how much was the growth rate? 6.3%, which means that is a big increase. After the reforms were underway, after 1991-92, the trade as a percentage of GDP